You've landed inside LaunchStreet, the business innovation podcast, where we interview top innovators out there shaking things up so you can innovate, differentiate, and get further faster. Since you're here, we know you're the type of person that recognizes the importance of unlocking your innovation advantage so you can compete and win. And now, your host, the person that has worked with leading companies like Disney, Procter & Gamble, Aero Electronics, the U.S. Army Research Labs, and Red Robin on upping their innovation advantage, Tamara Gontor.
Hello again, LaunchStreet. If you didn't already know, Tamara here, your host. This episode is part 2 of the Primal Mind / book review discussion that I have with my friend Derrick Kuhn. In this one, I'm starting where I ended the last episode, which if you didn't already listen to, I highly recommend you go back and check that one out as well. There's a lot of great stuff that we break down about what the primal mind is, how it plays tricks on us, how it's a bodyguard that doesn't allow in information sometimes. And the reason that's all important to you and me is that the primal mind is often in control. And we want to not necessarily control it, but we want to understand it and harness it so that we can be stronger innovators, stronger leaders, more relevant and valuable in the work that we do, and help ourselves get unstuck, not sabotage ourselves, which the primal mind often does. Now, for part 2, I'm going to pick up where I left off, which is talking about how I think the primal mind is like online dating. Let's just go from there. So I kind of feel like it's a little bit like online dating. And just go with me for a second.
Do go. Yeah, I cannot wait to hear this.
I swear it'll make sense.
Yeah. I was wondering why you're so interested in this topic.
Right. It's been helping me a lot. The first impression is very few words and pictures. That's really what you get online, right? And I'm not knocking online. I mean, the reality is we don't meet people in our little circles, right? So this is not a commentary about online digital dating. But that's what you get. And you have to make a split decision of whether or not that person is going to be let in the club at all. Like, are you going to even engage with them? Right. So that gets them on the VIP list. And then day 1, you get a little more nuanced and a little like more depth, right? And day 2, you go even further. And day 3, like you're getting more and more depth. And it seems like that's a little bit what we're saying, right? To get to and contrast, right? Because every man has a picture of them catching a fish. I'm just letting you know, stop. Just stop.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it's supposed to say. I don't want to tell you what I think it's not appropriate. But contrast, right? Like your picture has to stand out. Yep. It has to be visually engaging, right? All the things that you and I were just talking about. And fear in the sense of like, ooh, will he like me? Like there's a weird anxiety that comes up. But that gets you to the door, and then you can get more nuance. And I think that in the world that we live in with exchanging of information and marketing to people and getting our ideas heard and all that, it's really the same thing, right? Start with what gets you in the door, and then you can go into the nuances and the details. Or do you think that's not right? Do you have to stay
No, I mean, that's great.
Primal?
No. I mean...
See, it went somewhere, Derrick. You were concerned. That was great. The look on Derrick's face was very concerned as I went there.
The primal mind's job is to protect, survive, and then regulate attention, right?
Right.
And so the getting all systems engaged is where then you can go deeper. And so the first and prior, it would be like this. If you are a baseball player, if you you get in that bat, sometimes you hit it, sometimes you don't. But if you didn't even get into the stadium, let alone at the plate, the primal mind is that network, and so you have to get the engagement thumbs up or pass through the
which is what you're talking about, though, right? The contrast, the visual, like
all those things.
If you get too deep, too nuanced, too soon, it doesn't get you there.
Right? Yeah, cognitive overload. If you ever been to a website like where you just get a million choices at once, right? Yeah, right. There's the you just can't handle it. So and again, smart people like you, they want to, just dogpile ideas on people, and
because everything matters.
Everything matters, and you're smart, and you have a million points you got to get across in 30 seconds or less. Right. That kicks you out of the stadium, kicks you out of the parking lot. You're not even allowed in. So the most overlooked and highest opportunities is a way to get introduced to full attention the right way. Because you can throw a ball at someone's head and you get their full attention, right? Hits them in the side. Like you don't want to make the mistake of doing just a move to grab attention without it being.
And then fall short.
That's right. It has to be congruent to lead them to the actual rational mind engagement. Otherwise, it backfires. If you pull something like "you're gonna die today," click here on this ad, you'll get this sort of panicked alarm. But then when it gets sorted, it goes the other way. So it's not like you go just after the primal mind with these tools. It has to be leading you elegantly to the main persuasive argument.
So do you find that in the digital marketing that you do too, that like you start with that? I love that example of courage, right? So the mom who I'd love to meet if that's actually happening.
Yeah, I would imagine you just like
right.
you did something.
I think I was in that ad.
Or it could be like a car. You probably have a car stop.
That's right. Defending her child from a bear. That's courage, number one. And then the second ad that they see, or maybe their email that they get because they've engaged, gets a little bit more depth. And then like the third email after that gets a little bit more. I mean, is that how you think about the evolution of the marketing stuff that you do too?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And so an example, let's say that ad led to a new software that you have to pay for that oversees the social media platforms and guards your kids against predators, right? So what we would say is, and this is not a real thing to be clear, but this would be where I would go with that image. As long as that the emotional and visual imprint then
continues, right? You don't get to walk away from
exactly. You get nothing, and all those emotions are still active as they enter the main description of what you do and how you help others, and so all those emotions get channeled. So now you have full engagement from both the primal mind and the rational mind, and the lifts they get there in conversion and engagement and sales are commensurate with that. It is 200 to 300% greater than just a text-based explanation. Like people put the little box of software that no one even uses anyway.
Yeah.
And like, even if you use strong and captivating words, like even a stat. I used to love stats. Like 97% of children online eventually have a predator attempt or something like that. That is alarming. But that is not the same as a visual story that then introduces that stat. It is completely different impact on people. So,
I want to talk a little bit about decision fatigue for a moment. I want to make sure we don't run out of time to get there. Because you and I have talked a lot about kind of the quality of decisions that we make and how the primal mind impacts them greatly. And the fact that there's this real thing called decision fatigue that we don't realize. We try to go. Yeah. And energy is, and kind of we were saying it earlier, right? That the mind, it tries to be efficient, right? Our brains want our minds to not spend energy. That's the battle that we're facing every day. Yet we're in meeting to meeting until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then the quality of our decisions go away, because at the end of the day, that is our energy and our ability to make decisions is extremely finite.
That's right.
Actually. And the primal brain is trying to keep us from expending any of the energy, because we might need to run away from a saber-toothed tiger at some point.
Yeah, it's got to conserve. That's exactly right. If you use it's the V8, you have a very limited gas tank, let's say a gallon, and you use it back to back, there's literally nothing left.
Right.
That's why recovery is so important, sleep are so important. There are ways to do it, but it isn't a matter of willpower in short order.
That you can't just push through.
You can't push through. And that is the mistake. Went back to your earlier example about the person who went off the rails. And her tank may have been empty.
Right. So,
and critical thinking, emotional regulation, those are all high energy activities as far as brain power goes. So primal mind's like, I'm exhausted, I got stuff everywhere, and then so if you have to, have you ever tried to find a piece of paper because you weren't well organized? You're burning, and then try to then write something from it.
Yeah.
It is exhausting. So we have no more. It's you just got to toughen up, push through, those kinds of things. It's physically impossible. If it was a marathon and you're asked to run another marathon, there would be no question in the physical world that it's impossible, unless you're David Goggins.
Right, I was going to say, I know someone who
right. I know, and then you swim across the ocean to Europe and hang out. He's amazing. But, and again, the governor he talks about in his book is the body will start to shut down sooner than it needs to. Well, the mind has that exact same dynamic.
Yeah.
Right. So it is trying to protect us, and yet we lash it relentlessly, and just can't be. It's just not effective.
So we were talking about earlier as we were prepping for all this, right? I was saying that I have this tendency to burn really hot, right? I am full in, full energy, full presence, and then I crash.
Yep.
And then I can come back to it, and then I crash. And there are some times where that crash comes sooner than others, depending on what I've been doing.
Right.
And I used to feel really guilty because I used to think, oh my God, I'm so lazy. Like here I am, it's noon on Thursday and I'm spent. Like
Right.
I have nothing left to give.
Yeah.
I've physically and mentally done everything I can. And I don't think we give ourselves enough permission to recognize, to your point, that like when it's empty, it's empty.
Yep.
And we need to back off. And when we look at not just 3 p.m., it's not about like one day versus the next. It's kind of bigger than that. But when we look at how we run our lives, we're trying to stay up, like so that line is up high all the time. Right. But it's not possible. And the thing that I see, and then I've done too, so I'm not judging other people because I've been there too, is the decisions. We have decision fatigue. That's
right.
How we're talking about it. And the decisions that we make are lacking in quality because we're not making them at full capacity.
100%. And that's where I think Cal Newport gets into deep work, right? The idea is in order to move anything forward significantly, you need to have the space and the bandwidth to go all in for an extended amount of time. And then you're done. So you can't, in a sense, I think he might agree that the primal mind is right. You must conserve your best energy for the best tasks. Yeah. And instead, we're in these meetings, we're responding to things. There is no method to ensure that for most people.
So how do you do it personally?
I have a team that regulates me hard. Actually, so
they're your bouncers in real life.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because with the company philosophy, like I'm not a big process guy and all these things, but I do know this. I want to conserve that precious mental firepower for the right task. So as much as we can, we want to eliminate things that are a misuse of your critical energy. So the first thing is and so when we get to, the idea of strategy is a prioritization of things based on your objective. Well, that's the first way I would look at it. Like, where are the high impact tasks and then build a method to ensure you are protecting that, right, as much as you can, and then deploying that successfully in the areas you need to. The other thing then, but there are still limits to that. Like you can still do that, and then at the end of 4 hours straight working on a book or after developing a brilliant client strategy, then you still need to have a recovery built in. And so for my read, there's a couple ways to do it. You have to make sure you're well rested. There's a pretty good baseline lift there. Also, though, physical repetitive tasks give your brain to recharge a little bit, like walking. So walking's pretty well. Like, so you give yourself a break and don't listen to podcasts or audible books. One of my friends,
right? Because then you're still using
your brain. You're not shutting it off, and try to unfocus your eyes. When we read, it seems like it's a passive activity, but the brain is actually spending some serious energy to do that. So you have to, and it's interesting, as one of my friends told me, he's like, you should listen to music, because I bet you between every task and sometimes during tasks, I am consuming podcasts and books. Like, you need to give your brain a break. So the idea is you have to recover as hard as you can. That sounds like the interesting description of recovery, right?
Yeah.
So you burn hot on both ends.
Well, you have to be as present recovering as you are when you're active mentally and physically.
Yeah, right. If you're at 90 when you're charging, you need to be at the opposite, negative 90 when you're recovering. So you have to do full recovery when you recover. And like walking, and just like, listening to some music, so we weave some of those in. You do need breaks. TED Talks are 18 minutes.
Yeah.
That's based on full attention, can last about, like, full all-in engagement is about 18 minutes, and then you're done. So you got to build in micro breaks in there too. And it's not easy. I mean, so two things: build good processes and identify what you need that energy for, try to eliminate all the things that drain it, and then make sure you are doing hard recovery between expenditures.
So what I love about this conversation is I think it's a much deeper explanation and more real explanation of why certain people are so repetitive in some of their tasks. So, right. There's all those stories about Steve Jobs and his mock turtleneck, right? And how he eliminated that decision. Yeah. But I don't think in the media, at least as far as I remember, it ever discussed why, right? Because that's energy that's then not being expended, that can be expended elsewhere. We just think of like, oh, he has to make a million decisions, so he's not making that one. Right. But it's so much more important than that. And I think if we actually did a scorecard of our day or of our week, right, we would find a lot of places that we're expending energy that is is forcing exhaustion later, if we fixed, would actually allow us more energy in the places that we actually want it. And I will tell you that, so I do I'm never going to say her name right, I'm sorry, but Marie Kondo, it's the art of tidying up, right? Okay. She has a very specific system, but I'm not an organized person by nature. You and I have been talking about this, right? But if you look around my house where we're recording, like things are where they're supposed to be. And together, I have boys, so it's not always clean, but implementing her system of organization allowed me to take where are my keys? Why are these beans over here? And these beans are over there. Where are the scissors? There's 10 in every room. Like all those little things that we don't think about expend energy. And when I started doing that, my energy went up in other places because I no longer had to give thought and more importantly though, energy. So when Steve Jobs picks the same outfit every morning, right, he is conserving energy. It's not just one less decision because he doesn't care about it. It's because it actually helps him somewhere else. And I think we could all do that in a lot of places in our lives. In work, we use Basecamp. That's our thing, but we have templates for every process. So we never have to recreate the wheel every time we start a new client. And we evolve it and change it as we learn and grow. It's not that things don't change, but we start with the baseline so that we don't have to spend energy figuring that out. And it's made a huge difference. I still nap every now and again. As I said, like sometimes my body and my mind are like, you're done. Yeah, it's going to take a break whether you give it
totally. Right? Yeah, no, I think that's a great analogy. And what's helped me sort of conceptually is if you just think of it like you have a gallon of gas in a day. And yes, there's a little bit of ways to recover and push that back up, but the majority of it is finite. It is day by day finite. And so without treating that, without accounting for that awareness of the different kind of tasks and that it is a finite resource, you won't implement the level of change that you need. And again, we joke with my team, it's like a seesaw. There's me on one side that is doing, and then I have a whole team of people who understand that and we work together to ensure we're really all doing the right kind of tasks based on our strengths and based on our training. And it makes a huge difference, right? You don't want to reinvent the wheel 100 times when every time you're doing that same task, it's crushing your energy that you need later.
But I think the trick is, or the hidden truth about it is, we don't realize it's crushing our energy because it's little chips, right? It's a little bit of the gas every single time until
sometimes a lot, right?
Right. But I don't think we're conscious of it. I don't think like we walk away like, well, that was 1% less, right? That I don't have somewhere else. It just kind of adds up over time, and then suddenly you're on empty. But I do think that sometimes that fatigue is hidden because we power through. So we go down to Starbucks and we get a 4-shot latte, right? And we come back up and we let caffeine kind of hopefully take over for a little bit. But I don't know that really changes the quality of the decisions and the fatigue that we're actually feeling.
Right, it offsets it for a little bit, but you're
not really, right?
Yeah, what we should invent is a wearable that has like your energy bar and you cannot recharge it. Maybe you can halt the degradation, but you can't recharge it till the next day. So you're like, you've got one big effort left today and it's 10 a.m., then you have to start rethinking and planning your day.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah.
The other thing I love about that is it accounts for the whole day because we sometimes compartmentalize work versus personal. And as you and I know with kids too, right? Like you get up, the kids are up, and like your day starts the minute you wake up. It doesn't start the minute you open your computer.
Exactly.
So by the time we get to noon at work, we've already experienced a full day of decisions and energy expenditure. And again, just going back to the primal brain, I think the important takeaway here is that's the job of that. One of the jobs is to not allow you to get to exhaustion, right? It wants you to conserve energy.
For good reason.
For good reason. And I also think that in the technological age that we're in, a lot of the work that we now need to do takes more energy than before. So in the past, in the industrial age, right, we ran a machine, and that machine that we ran the same way every day. We pushed the same buttons every day. So not that doesn't take energy, but it doesn't take as much to do what you already know over and over and over again.
Right.
Now we're constantly thinking about, all right, I've got new challenges to adapt to, new opportunities. A marketplace that we live in is totally different. So now I've got to expend more energy on a day-to-day basis than I ever have in the past.
Yep, 100%. I mean, and I would even go past industrial evolution to the majority of being on this planet. We were around 15 people most of our life, right?
Yeah.
And what's interesting is cues that drain, you had to watch their faces very carefully. And if something was wrong, you need to sort it out because life or death was on the line with those 15. Now, so we are really hardwired to spend a lot of energy reading people and making sure we have a good place in the tribe, because it used to mean life or death, right? And now we take social media that has transferred into the worst places. Someone's rude to us in line at Starbucks. It bothers us for a while as we walk away. There's reasons for that, even though the mechanism is no longer life-threatening, but just like the rest of the email that comes in that's now the saber-tooth tiger, you get all these misfirings. So not only is the need greater, that the triggers that burn it automatically are higher, and they're everywhere.
And the volume is higher and the quantity is higher.
Yeah.
You know what would be interesting to do is a study on the correlation between people who have high emotional intelligence and their energy expenditure. Because it was just, as you were talking, I was just thinking that people who are constantly trying to read other people, provide empathy, like drive assertiveness, like all the things that make up emotional intelligence, as we now, like it's kind of the buzzword right now, are probably expending a ton more energy to make that happen every day with other people than people who aren't.
That's 100%. Maybe that explains why people are, isolating and being distant. And a lot of people are burning that unnecessarily on social media, for example. So again,
we have new places to
have new places just to waste it everywhere. So, and to burn it unnecessarily. So and so the complexity of life, civilization, and technology, it requires that shift more than ever to be careful of spending that high quality energy, but also the drains for it are higher than everywhere because we have a mismatch of the primal mind against civilization. So it's what could go wrong?
How could this possibly be bad? It's all a good thing. Well, it's interesting that you say that though about social media, because I do think, I'll see a lot of people, and again, myself included, when I need a moment, I'll go to Facebook and scroll, and it's kind of mindless scrolling. I'm not really engaged, but I'm still expending energy that I don't need to expend.
Yeah, and your primal mind is actually on guard then, and is watching and judging and doing a bunch of stuff and ready to if you they do like heart rate variability, sweating, all those things are massively impacted when you're on social media. So even though your rational mind maybe is taking a break, believe me, your primal mind basically says life or death. I got to see, am I fitting in with my tribe? Because that really, really matters to me.
So that's the other key to it, right? It's always working. So even when you feel like you're tuned out, it's still doing its job.
Exactly.
Which is another reason why it's so important to understand it. And as you and I were talking, I think this was when we were doing one of our prep calls, is, I was kind of equating it to like a cell phone, right? So when your cell phone's at 0, it takes forever for it to get to 50%. And you're like watching the phone, like, really? Oh my God. But if your cell phone's at 50%, it gets to 100 fast. So I think that there's a different rate of recovery of if you've gotten all the way to 0 versus if you let it get to 50, 60. And it's funny, now that I say that out loud, it makes me realize I need to get better at stopping at 40%, 30%, whatever.
That's a great point.
And letting myself charge versus allowing myself to get to 0 and then charging, which is why I think my crashes are so hard. Right? I don't just like sit down for a minute.
It's like a gas.
I pass out.
A car that ran out of gas, right? That's never good for the car, and it's choiceless. Right. So it takes less time and energy to refill halfway through, and nothing breaks and nothing gets worn down over time. So I like that. I like that for a lot.
Do you think though that, I know the cell phone is kind of a different thing, but it does feel like it's a different rate of recovery at 0 versus 50%, even though maybe you're going the same distance?
Yeah, no, that, I don't know the science behind that, but I would say that because what I think happens is we extend so far past through caffeine and like that limited set of willpower we apply that we're going, below negative in a sense. I like the analogy to 0. When you check out completely, that's not good, not just for energy recovery, but you've harmed the whole system now. Right.
Well, I think that's when I do that, I think that's when I really feel burnt out and exhausted. And it can happen in a week time, it can happen in a month time. Like, it really depends on what I'm doing and how fast I'm going and the season of business that I'm in. But when I get to 0, everybody around me knows it. It takes a lot for me to keep it good. But that's when this could sound so odd, but that's when I crash on the couch and have one of those naps where your whole body feels the exhaustion. And I don't get those often, but that's when I know I went too far.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not a matter of just closing my eyes for a minute. This is I am
Yeah.
I'm doing it. All right. So before we have to close out this episode of Book Club, what was your one, and all the stuff that you've studied on the Primal Brain, what was your most actionable takeaway for you? The thing that actually impacted how you did something?
So I think that the easiest way, the most actionable would be we implemented a motto. It is not a platitude because I feel about those. But when I was looking for a way to sort of encapsulate this and spread it across the entire company and myself. Show, don't tell. Mm-hmm. So that affects how I. Kids model behavior, right? So show what you want, what your thing, and then you're getting the primal mind and then the rational mind also. So show, don't tell. Whether we're talking strategy with a client, it's one thing to drone on and on versus map it out on the whiteboard or visualize it. When we're showing all the incredible results and search traffic skyrocketing, we need to show, don't tell. So that would be, I would say that, and that can be universally, showing is also your body language. Like you can say hi to someone, but you can also say hi in like tone, body posture. So show, don't tell. That would be my most actionable, universally applicable.
Not platitude.
I got to clarify. So
I like that. I like that a lot, actually. And for me, it's this idea of just focus on getting onto the VIP list, right? I tend to go too deep, too fast, too all in, too much information. And this has really taught me to back up. Like, hey, the primal mind has to allow you in. So start simple and then get deeper and deeper as you go in the work that you do, and people allow you in. And it's actually made a huge difference. We have seen the impact with people being accepting and actually implementing our work at a much higher rate because I'm getting in the door, where I think in the past, you almost get shut down, even though you're like, but the stuff is brilliant. Why don't you understand it? But it's because I wasn't getting past that bouncer you talked about to begin with. So
and even if you did,
you
pushed them out of the way, you ran in, you started chatting, and then they grab you and they pull you out.
Totally, I'm that person.
Around, right?
Yeah.
So
the bouncer's like, no, you don't, honey. Get out. All right. So the books that we cover, and tell me if there's any that you think should be added to the list, though, are Persuasion, Thinking Fast and Slow, Deep Work. I was just saying that I started reading Atomic Habits. I really like it, but I'm only halfway through. So,
one of my favorites, and it's not for the faint of heart, is Elephant in the Mind. And it's in the mind. And it talks about evolutionary psychology and our tendencies to deceive ourselves so we can deceive others. And why that matters is it shows a nuanced understanding of the primal brain's rather deep. So basically, we'll know we need to convince others, so we convince ourselves first, and you're not even aware that you're doing it. So it is something that introspection doesn't solve. And he goes through how it works with charity, how it works in marketing, and it's
what do you mean convince yourself first? Give me an example. So my primal brain is not letting you in, Derrick.
So the example would be if you want to convince someone that you have three options, this is the best path forward, we should hire these guys. The best way to communicate, so the primal mind's great at reading body language and face, but it knows, so if you know, and you're trying to do this for deceptive reasons or personal gain. Yeah. So basically personal gain drives us more than we think. So we deceive ourselves to then deceive others. What it shows is that.
Do you think that's I have to wrap my head around it before we close out.
Yeah.
Do you think that's people let's go with Bernie Madoff for a minute, who stole all that money, right? Ponzi scheme. Who convince themselves that what they're doing is right and true and the right thing to do, even though they're very blatantly stealing. I mean, there's, I think, a lot of other examples in history. In fact, I just watched this this Netflix documentary on Bikram, the one that started Bikram Yoga. And I love Bikram Yoga, by the way, the process of it. But
he's a wild one.
Yeah, I would highly recommend that documentary, mostly because of what he convinced himself was true, and I think he thought it was true. Right. So is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, that's exactly right. And again, and that's a great example, and that helps. Why I think it's
my primal brain needed. I needed a second. Right.
Yeah, it shows the strength. It's hard to realize how much as Kahneman says, system one's in the driver's seat, and system one is the star of the show. And he goes through some great ways of like, that is a perfect example.
Yeah.
System two knows, these guys know that, but system one has found a way to believe it.
Right.
So that to me, and you know, again, it's not the best reflection of humanity, but I think it does help understand that dynamic a little bit better.
But I think it also explains market research a little bit. So I used to do a lot of, I still do some ethnographies, right? We go into people's homes or commute with them to work or whatever. And I'll never forget this one I did a while ago where we were trying to understand how to make cereal portable. So it was in the years before all the bars and everything was out. So it was for General Mills. So we recruited people who said they were healthy. Pretty simple. Like, do you eat healthy most of the time? Do you have healthy foods in your house? All that. We go into this woman's home just outside of Minneapolis. And this is why I love ethnographies, because you can see the reality versus hearing. And this woman is going on and on about how healthy she is as she's putting sugar on her Honey Nut Cheerios. Right? And then she's got a deep fryer on her counter, a used one, not one that she pulled out for special occasion, right? And but she believed it. She wasn't intentionally lying just to get the little check you get in the end.
Exactly
if you heard her and saw her body language, you would know that she believed she was healthy. And frankly, relative to how she grew up, this may be a healthier version of what she even knew as a child. But I think in everyday life, it's not just the Bernie Madoffs and the Bikrams of the world. It is all of us convincing ourselves that we're our best self when we're not.
That's right.
But I'm just going to add one really quick to that. However, the challenge there is the primal brain's like, you sure about that? I think there's a little bit of like that out of alignment that happens too when you do that. But she was a great example because she was just putting her best self forward.
Yeah, exactly.
She wasn't lying.
And I think that, there's those the leaders of most of the, countries, China, Germany, that really pushed, they did believe it. Those are easy to spot it, but those are extreme examples. Right. But it is everywhere. And I would wager most people listening would think, well, yeah, but I have a better handle on it than I do. Right. And that's just, it is because it is so embedded, it's hard to see. And that I think is why I recommend that book, because there's no way you can read the studies, the experiments they've done and not have a chance to see it in a new light.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it time and time again in the market research. And, sometimes the clients will be sitting in the back room like, how does that person think they're healthy? How does that person think they're active? How does that person think they're financially intelligent? But they do. They're not lying. They truly believe that about themselves. And we all have it, right? I'm sure I have it about myself too. And I just, to your point, it's so ingrained I don't even know it. Right. So, all right, we are going to conclude this episode of our book club in the Primal Brain. I would love to know what you got out of it. How it helped you. So write your comments, or as you always do, send us emails. So we've got more to come.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for hanging with us on Inside LaunchStreet. If you know someone that is truly ready to unlock their innovation advantage, have them join you on LaunchStreet. Discover your innovation advantage. Build a team of high-performing innovators and ignite ideas and solutions that create massive impact. GOTO, LaunchStreet.com. Remember, innovators, if you don't take the leap, somebody else will.